Okay. All right. Welcome to everybody. I'm hearing some background noise, huh? Is my audio okay? Is it clear?
Yeah? Yes, okay. Yes, clear.
Yeah.
Good evening to all the parents, all the families who are here. I hope some of you are coming back again, and I hope some of you are new. So for those of you who are new, my name is Shivani Pandit. I'm a special educator, and I am the founder of Samarthya Foundation. We are here in association with SNCC Rehab Foundation and Harshali Kharche to present to you our Samruddhi series, which is a series for parents of children with disabilities and adult siblings, where we talk about many topics and issues related to financial planning. And we are also here with our Samarthya ambassador, Ruja Bakkar. We are here to welcome you along with, to listen to actually and learn from our specialist, Mr. Rahul Kelapure, who comes in every month at the end of the month and gives us an amazing session on a specific topic. This month's topic is estate planning and planning for the living trust. So I just want to take 1 second to introduce, talk a little bit about Samarthya Foundation, and then we'll talk about SNCC Rehab, and then we will get started with our session for today. So for those of you who are new, again, Samarthya Foundation is based out of the United States. And I have been in the field of special education for the past 25 years. I work with children with autism and intellectual disabilities.
Let's see what is.
And I started this foundation mainly to create public awareness on inclusion of persons with disabilities in India, to provide teacher training and professional development, and to work on really a lot of parent training initiatives. So I just want to share a few things that Samarthya is currently offering right now. It's all done virtually because of COVID, of course. I deliver intensive parent trainings via Zoom. It's 6 to 8 week sessions to help parents work with their children at home. And these sessions are in English, Hindi, or Marathi. I also provide consultation and coaching to parents on Zoom. We do one-on-one intervention sessions with children. We are, of course, here for the financial literacy session, like I said. We are starting our inclusive storytelling sessions very soon. We do yoga sessions for parents. We have camps, and we also have started recently our Club Ananda, which is a therapeutic recreational club for children. So if you are interested in any of these activities, or if you have any questions, I'll ask Rucha or Harshali to put Samarthya's my email and my phone number as well as the website in the chat box. And मैं चाहूंगी कि अगर आप चाहें तो please do contact me for any other questions. And now I'd like to, of course, welcome and introduce my dear friend Harshali Kharche, who's also the founder of SNCC Rehab Foundation. And I would like to welcome her to talk a little bit about SNCC and then hand over the stage to Rahul.
Thank you so much, Shivani ma'am. I always say it's been a real pleasure to work with Samarthya Foundation. As usual, we are working on the similar vision to help the parents and everything. So that is SNCC, that is Special Needs Integration Center. We are based in Nagpur. And we are working in various areas like rehabilitation, empowerment, health, advocacy, and belief. Our ultimate goal is to provide the support to the special parents and the children in various ways. So we are doing various areas of work that we are working like awareness programs and supporting knowledge-based sessions and everything for the parents. So this is in knowledge-based financial literacy. This is also very important aspects of special need parents in our life. So we are here with Rahul Kelapure sir. Sorry, he is always guiding parents in so much detail. He has a tremendous knowledge of the financial sessions. So I would like to hand over to Rahul Kelapure sir for the further session. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much, Harshali, and thank you so much, Shivani, for welcoming me. And it's my pleasure to be part of this series, Samruddhi series, where on month we talk about different topics of interest in terms of finance with the parents and adult siblings of persons with disability. So this is, as I've earlier also said, that this is really close. This topic is really close to my heart, and I'm fortunate that I get this opportunity month on month to talk about it. So it's my pleasure, really. And basically, my name is Rahul Kelapure, and I work with Securities and Exchange Board of India in their legal department. Of course, I have, I stay in Mumbai, and I myself am a person with disability. I am visually challenged. So that's a little bit about me. And of course, as we go on, I will, of course, talk about my experiences, my life also. So we actually start the session today, and today's session is, estate planning and living trust. So now, this is an extremely important topic, not only for a parent or a sibling of person with disability, but this is equally important for anybody and everybody here. Now, what is estate planning? So essentially, estate planning is where you plan as to you actually kind of ensure that the wealth that you have accumulated over the period of time and of your lifetime is passed on to the next generation in a very smooth way and in a very efficient way. Now, I tell you, there are a lot of experiences I have seen in my life. I've seen people, doing all fine. Everything is absolutely fine. Suddenly, next day, people don't get up, and this is what is life. We cannot predict life. So it is important to really have that point in mind, that life is unpredictable and life would shoot you from the point blank. So here the point is not that I'm painting some kind of a grim picture in front of you. That's not the point. The point is that we got to understand that this is an important point. This is an important topic, and as soon as we understand the importance of this issue, it's better for all of us. Now, I've recently I have a friend who's thalassaemic, and the other day she called me. She said, and of course she's working and all of that is fine, but she called me and she said, you know what, a week back, her parents were COVID positive, and the same day they had to be hospitalized. Within like 8-10 hours of time when they got COVID positive, and suddenly next day they had to be admitted in ICU, and they never came back. And it happened so that her mother passed away at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the father passed away at 8 o'clock in the evening, same day. And suddenly everything had changed. I think the incidences like these makes this topic of essentially, having your estate plan in place, that shows that it's really, really important. Now, we'll come to that, why it is important to do it, because, and I'll give you an example for that as well as we move on. So as we've talked about what is the need of the estate planning. So now, see, the benefits of estate planning are really, as we just talked about a little bit, there are numerous benefits. It's really useful because I have seen in my life a lot of people running pillar to post to get their assets, left by the deceased person, whether they're the parent or a sibling or even a spouse. So it is important, and I think now, of course, people are understanding the importance of estate planning, but I think still a lot needs to be really seen, what all things to be done. Now, you see, if we haven't planned our estate, what really may happen? You may actually, in that case, you'll have to actually go for something called as probate. Now, what is probate? When you have a estate which is not, I mean, there's no will such, or the planning is not done in a way. So in that case, what happens is that there is a procedure as per the personal laws of the parties. Like, for example, either Hindu Succession Act will be applicable to you, or if you're Muslim, the regulation of Shariat will be applicable. Or the Indian Succession Act, where is applicable for certain other religions. So of course, then all of that comes into play, and that becomes a problem at times, because then I have seen it takes a lot of time. If you have to go through the court and get the estate on your name, what really happens is you've got to go through a very long procedure, which is through the courts, and that sometimes takes even a year. I mean, generally 6 months is the minimum. 6 to 9 months is the minimum. And recently I've come across a report which said that at least a year is the average time to get this procedure. And as we see, there is a lot of pressure on our courts, and as the procedure of the courts that we have in India, there is a lot of backlog, and it takes a lot of time. Now, this is even more important when we have, if you have a disabled child or a disabled sibling, because for them it will be even more difficult, really, to have this property, this property kind of on their name. And of course, there are those additional issues also. And then there is probate. Then your property documents become public record and all of that. So that is a big issue. In fact, recently I have come across a person whose father passed away due to COVID, and she was actually struggling in the sense that although her father had actually he had actually written a will, but the issue for her was there was some confusion in terms of the distribution of the property, and then they actually had to go through the procedure, court procedure, and all of that happened. And now what, it took a lot of time, although there was no dispute between the siblings at that time, but still it took about, I think her father passed away in the month of April, and even now we are end of October, and even now 6 months later, the issue is not resolved. So so those are the issues that we actually need to address. Okay, now what we can probably do is that really, wherever you have you're investing somewhere, or you're putting your money somewhere, always ensure that you have you appoint a nominee there. Now what happens if we don't have a nominee? Many times what we find is that it will be an extremely difficult task really to get your money back, in the sense that you will not get your own money on time. Supposing there's some issue, and if the nominee is not appointed, then you'll actually have to submit a no objection certificate from the heirs and all of that. It becomes a huge issue there. Then there is also an issue of forced heirship. Now what is that forced heirship? Now forced heirship is really is that where we have certain people, it automatically goes in a particular distribution pattern as per the law. Now that itself is another issue. As you see, a lot of people will have, you as a person may not be really willing to wanting that your asset should go to XYZ, this kind of person, whoever is the person, and unfortunately that will happen. That will actually happen. So it is actually against your wishes. So so there are many these kind of issues that can be really addressed if you don't make your estate planning in a proper way. So what you need to do really is that you need to the easiest way, as we in a normal Bolchalka language we call it as make a will. Now many times you may, oh, why should I make a will? I mean, or a person told me, my friend actually, he said that, listen, I don't want to make a will. I said, why? He says that I don't want to create that negativity in my life, thinking, okay, no, will is to be opened after my death. So am I going to die? No, I'm not going to die very soon. So I said, but that's not the point. The point is that, it's important to be responsible for what we are doing in life. So I think it's just a kind of a mental block that we at times we have about these kind of things. And so I think therefore one has to really make a will. Now the other issue, the other thing that I see is that for those who say that no, I don't want to there may be certain changes that I want to do as I grow old or as I age. The point is, you can make as many changes in your will, and you can actually write as many wills as you want in your lifetime. So it's not, and then the last will shall be considered as your actual will, which will take effect after after it becomes operative. So that also problem is also resolved. So you can make as many wills as possible. There's no problem. That's number two. Now the next point is that when you actually want to make this will, you got to be careful. What all things you need to do is that you have to describe the properties in sufficient details. Now what do I mean by that? you got to explain these in sufficient detail. Means what is really is that if you just write my 50,000 FD will go to my son, say for example, if you say so, and and another 50,000 to my daughter, say for example. Now the problem would be, which 50,000 would be an issue, because if you have more than one 50,000 FD, that could be an issue. Or even if you just say, that my FD in Bank of India will go to my son. Now the problem is that if you have more than one FD, what would happen to that? So in order to see the whole idea behind making the estate planning is to have that clarity, to give that clarity, so that there's no issue, right? So for the beneficiaries. So it is important that we write the details of the property that we want to bequeath is described in sufficient details, whether it is so you could actually probably write the FD number, or those kind of details, so that it is easy for people to then actually understand and what does it mean. Of course, one has to really keep reviewing your will from time to time. Now, why do I say so? See, as we live life, there are different kind of occasions in life. There are marriages, divorce, there are deaths in the family. There are newborns, right? There are births in the family. There are different kinds of incidents in the family, right? So considering all of that, and while you've actually made your will, it is possible that you may break some of your investment, and actually you may utilize it for yourself. So it is important to update your will, your estate plan from time to time, especially at every major event, a life event, as I just explained. So that is extremely important. Then what you need to do is also, and suppose there's no major event in life, you could probably review it every 3 to 5 years. That will be a good idea to just review it. Nowadays, it is not very difficult to make a will. You get a lot of formats, a lot of these all these procedural parts, everything online. You get those calculators. You get all the relevant information generally if you want to make a will. Now, that's one part of it. The other thing is, of course, you can actually write it on a normal piece of paper. That's not a problem. Your estate plan. Also, what you need to do really is ensure that it is signed properly, signed by you, signed by the witnesses. Now, witnesses is important because they will vouch for it that you have signed the document. They would not vouch for what you have written in the will. They are not supposed to know, they're not required to really know what are the contents of the estate planning. They just need to know that they just need to verify that you've actually signed the will. So it is important to do that. Now, Rahul, of course,
Rahul, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I just want to make sure I'm looking at the slides. Should I move to the create the estate plan in 12 steps? Is that where we are?
Yes, we are there.
Okay, so sorry, I couldn't.
No problem. Yeah, actually, I go with the flow, so I sometimes.
Yeah, I realized that you have moved on to the create the estate plan. That's why I thought of interrupting you. So I moved on to the right slide. Now we are on the one that says determine and establish the necessary directives. Am I correct with that?
Yes, that's correct. So so now and of course you need to inform your you've got to actually make a what do you call executor. Now, what is executor? Executor is somebody who would ensure what you've said in your life is executed as per your wishes. Now, generally, you should ensure that the executor is not somebody who is beneficiary of your of the estate. Now, what normally may happen if you, I mean, there is no bar really. It's not necessary that you can't have it legally. You can have it, but the problem sometimes is that there may be a conflict of interest, and somebody may just take an objection, and the whole issue may just spiral. So, so it is important that we have executor, and you got to inform the executor. I mean, whoever is the person that you have who's you've appointed as executor, you got to inform that person and kind of explain, hey, look, this is I'm appointing you as an executor, and would you be willing to do so? I think that will be a good idea. And then, of course, you also need to try and see that if something is added in your property, so you got to actually make either you can actually make a fresh will and submit it, or you can just make a codicil. Something called codicil means it's like a small extension, small change. Supposing you want to, you can just kind of an amendment in a way. So you can actually go ahead and do that. So that also be an important thing. See, the extremely important factor here is that somebody, either your spouse or somebody really somebody whom you really trust, should know where are the property documents and all the documents, relevant documents, including this this document about your estate planning is kept. They should know. Now, what happens otherwise? As I said, all these are the small logical and a very one would say as a common sense things, but if any of these is not taken care of in a proper way, we may actually, the whole purpose of making an estate plan would be defeated. So these are the points of estate plannings that we talked about. Now, actually, let's talk a little bit about estate planning for persons with disability. Now, see. As per the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, that act ensures that there cannot be any discrimination in terms of holding a property, ability to hold a property or to get the benefits of the property from for a person with disability. There's no, so basically it ensures that all the rights and rights are protected of these disabled persons. The section 33 of that act says so. Now, although the act says so, but actually practically there are certain issues there. I have come across some people who said that we had that, but actually practically when we actually wanted to kind of get the property transferred on the name of a disabled person, there was all sorts of issues there. And I'm sure since all of you, you may also have faced a lot of these kind of issues in terms of transfer of property for a disabled person. So see, what you can do is, of course, either you can actually make a trust. Of course, see, the first option is, of course, you can make the person with disability as a beneficiary of your estate planning, definitely, and ensure that his needs are taken care of in terms of finance, because this is very important. Especially this is so if the if the sibling or a child is suffering with some kind of a severe disability or intellectual disability, especially because it is important, then it is important to ensure that their needs are taken care of and all of that, right? So you can of course do that, but as I said, there are those issues in those cases, certain issues there. The other option is, of course, and we'll come to that. Either the trust could take effect at a specific time after you, or you can actually make a trust even now. So you can do that. We'll come to that. And the third way, really, this may sound very odd actually, but actually you can choose to not to make the person with disability a beneficiary of the estate plans that you have. You could probably make the other siblings or somebody as beneficiary, and then ensure through that through them that the needs of the person with disability are taken care of. Now, how you can do that and why is it sometimes beneficial, I'll tell you. You can actually do that in order to ensure that the needs of the person with disability are taken care of. That's one. The other thing is that there are some government schemes which are made for person with disability, but if you cross a certain threshold income, that benefit is not applicable in that case. So actually they may end up losing those benefits provided by the government. And recently I've come across a person who said that just a little bit of a inheritance he had gotten from his parents, and although that's not really sufficient also, but in spite of that he said that there's no so he lost out on a lot of government benefits that he would otherwise get. So that actually, therefore I sometimes say this could be also a strategy to ensure that the government benefits are not, you don't have to forego the benefits that would otherwise be available to this person with disability. At the same time, you are ensuring that the money is available for them. So that's another point that I wanted to bring across. And of course, then, as I said, you can also ensure there that this person with disability is taken care of through the other siblings or somebody else. Now, of course, there are risks in this, and this also, because what if the person with the other siblings or whoever chooses to not to really look after the person with disability, and there are those practical issues, so one has to really think about it. So my point here is that I'm giving you the options. Of course, of course you need to choose what sounds the best for you. And of course, if there's anything, we will of course discuss in our question and answer going forward. And later on also we can get in touch and we can see what we can do. So that was about the estate planning. Now let's actually talk about a little bit quickly about the living trust. So what is living trust? Living trust is where you actually say that you've actually given the assets, pledged the assets for the benefit of somebody. Now, here we will be talking more about, especially about a person with disability. Now here, if you so now there are two kinds of trusts that you can make. Either you can make a irrevocable trust, or you can make a revocable trust. Revocable trust, what happens is that you can actually change the terms of the trust at any number of times. The control is there with you of all the assets. Now, there are definitely some benefits that we have if you choose to make a trust and then spend the money out of the proceeds of that trust. So the money kept in the trust. So now that sometimes is a very tax efficient system also. Now this could be useful for your sibling or your child, but this can also be beneficial for the other children, somebody is other children with disability. So now it really depends as to what is the purpose of that. So you can actually make a family trust where you can ensure that the benefits, the person with disability, the child with disability is really taken care of even after you, till the child is there. So so that option is sometimes very, very important. In fact, I see these kind of things are done more so outside India and more the developed world. But in India, of course, some people are doing it, but not many people really are doing it, because of the fact that there is a cost involved. You got to make a separate accounting, you got to keep separate accounts of that, you got to have a bank account, you got to apply for PAN and certain other compliances that are applicable here. And although certain activities have become online now, but still there is a cost involved, and there is active involvement of the trustee is involved. Now, therefore, normally you would see in India, we would have a lot of NGOs in the form of trusts, and there are a lot of, there is a misconception here that we say, okay, no, if you have a lot of money, then only you can make a trust. But it's not like that. You can actually make a trust with very little money also, maybe as good as maybe 1,000 rupees or maybe 5,000 rupees. I don't know. So, so that's also possible. But the whole idea is that, this money goes in that trust. If you choose to, you can choose to do that. You can choose to transfer the money or transfer the assets on the name of trust. And the corpus of the trust would keep on growing. And, this way it will be beneficial for your child or your sibling with disability. I have also come across a lot of people who've actually are using this technique in order to even save taxes. So that's also possible. A little bit of planning is required there. Now, how much money would be required to be kept in the trust is a very subjective question, because that will depend. For that, you'll have to do a proper planning in the sense that, what will be the inflation, how much is the cost required month on month for this child. And those are the issues that one has to really keep in mind while making accumulating the trust assets. Of course, if the trust is made for a general benefit of persons with disabilities, and you also have one in your life, so what you can probably do is that you can then also apply for what do you call exemption, tax exemption under Section 80G of Income Tax Act and 12A of the Income Tax Act. So that's also possible after a period of time. I think after 3 years. Even now, I think even you can actually get the certificate even earlier, probably. Because of course that keeps on changing. So that the money that you're putting aside for the trust, you can actually get some tax benefit also on that. And a very good advantage of this is that you have the benefit of having a control over how it is being spent, what should be the checks and balances and all of that you can also ensure. So minimum two trustees you can have, and you can start this. So this is a very, very important thing. The trust will either it can be you can actually write in the trust deed that till what time it will whether it will get terminated automatically after a specified time, or happening of a particular event, or anything. Or you can actually make this trust as per will, like, wherever whenever the trustees feel that the purpose is over, or they no longer want to continue the trust, they can also sort of close the trust. So all of that is applicable. Here, in terms of trust, there is a compliance cost, there is an accounting cost, but otherwise, I think this could be a very good option to give the benefit, financial benefit, because sometimes, there may be some occasions where, especially if the person is with the intellectual disability, in that case, there could be an issue where he may not actually be able to take decisions for himself in terms of finance and money. In those cases, definitely this will be an important way to ensure that the person with disability is really taken care of, and you have a peaceful life going forward, and you will have you won't have those worries of what would happen to the person after me. Those worries, I know a lot of you are having a lot of sleepless nights for because of this worry. So that option definitely is there. There are some technical aspects. There are a lot of pointers I have given in the presentation. That, of course, I would request Shivani ji and Harshali to, if they could make a small kind of a summary of that, and if that could be shared with you, that will be important. And I think that's all that I want to speak from my side. And of course, now we can actually take questions or have some discussions, anything that you want to say, talk.
Yes.
We can have time for that.
Thank you so much for that, Rahul. I just want to say, Rahul ji's email and his phone number is on your screen. He's very generous in sharing that with you. So after the session also today, if you have any, of course, we'll do question and answer now, but if you need to contact him directly specific to your family's needs, you can definitely contact him. And you can also contact us at Samarthya for any additional information that you need. Like Rahul ji said, we every month we do a summary of his talk. So we will share a PDF document of key points that were discussed today. So you will get that. But other than that, if there is anything else you would like to know, definitely let us know. Contact us. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen now to know if anybody has any questions. This is the time for us to just have a chat with Rahul ji. Please feel free to raise your hand. I'll unmute you. Anything that you heard today or anything specific to your situation, you can, yes, Aditi, please go ahead. You can unmute yourself, I think. Aditi, can you hear us? Okay, you can't unmute. Okay, how about now? Can you unmute yourself now? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I can. Thank you.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can. Thanks for that. So Rahul, firstly, thanks a lot. I think very informative session. In fact, the name that you see is my daughter. She's autistic.
Okay.
So I had actually a couple of questions. The first question that I had is, you actually mentioned that the living trust can actually be created, even when the parents are alive. So could you elaborate that a little bit on? So if, let's say I want to set it up now, how does that work? And, if I move the property into the trust, let's say I have a couple of houses that I want to move into, the trust.
Yes.
How will that work, and what are the kind of, because today I'm kind of paying, even if it is not rented out, paying, rent and all of that.
Yes.
So how will that work? And so that, that was my first question.
Sure. So yeah, so basically, yes, you can start the trust even now, right from today or tomorrow. So that's possible. Now, only thing is that you'll have to do a little bit of a paperwork. You'll have to make a trust deed. There you would say, okay, who are the trustees, what are their rights and powers and liabilities and stuff like that, and how this will be. What is the objective of your trust? Then of course, you first will have to open a apply for a PAN card of the trust on the name of the trust, and open a bank account there. Now, what happens then is that this will be a separate entity created, and when you do that, you can of course transfer the assets of whatever assets that you want to transfer to the trust, anything like kind of donating the property to the trust, you could say, or pledge the property to the trust. Now that's one way, and of course, as you said, if you get the rent out of those property, that rent could be deposited in the trust bank account, and so the money wouldn't come to your account or anybody else's account. It will come to the trust's account, and there you'll have to, and of course you then have to file your annual reports, and your accounts will have to be managed properly and all of that. So that you can do. Now here, of course, you'll have to file an income tax return also of your trust. So whatever is the income of the trust will have to be submitted to the government through the returns. Now, when all of that happens, there are specific benefits in terms of income tax that you will get, and you can of course make your daughter as the beneficiary of this whole this trust property. So that's possible. It's a fairly simple process, but of course this requires a constant monitoring. You'll have to kind of keep doing the paperwork and all of that. So that's there, but definitely you can make it. You can, as I said, you can also change the terms of the trust any number of times. Of course, that the whole paperwork is involved, but you can definitely do that.
So is there the notion of how we utilize the money? For example, if it is in the name of my daughter,
Yes.
how the expense is spent from the trust? If there is an audit, is there a need that it has to be only for her? How is that? Because I'm assuming there is quite a big chance of that getting misused, right? That's why I was a little curious on how will that get tracked.
Sure. So what happens normally is that, if the expenditure is as per the terms of the trust deed, there's no problem. Now, of course, what I'm understanding from your question is probably you said that, if you've appointed somebody else as a trustee, and what if this person is not, if this person is not spending the money as per the terms of the trust. So of course, for that there is an audit. There is, there are checks and balances that you can have it. But what I'm suggesting here is that, if you want to create a trust for your daughter, probably you and your wife, or somebody who you really know, you can have the control in your hand. Be the trustee of that trust, and have it, kind of spend it there. I think that would be a better idea, probably, to ensure that there's no misuse of the funds.
Maybe one last question. I know there are a couple more hands raised. Sorry, but
no problem. Go ahead.
You got up an interesting point about FDs and financial instruments.
Yes.
So if all the financial instruments have the nominees updated, would that not be the easiest way? Because otherwise these FDs and all that, keep, rotating so many times. I mean, just tracking that would be difficult. Would nominees not be the best way to go on financial instruments?
Of course, nominee is the way to go, of course. But you know what normally happens is that, having a nominee also is not a very foolproof, because see, nominee is not the owner of the property, owner of the FD or any investment. Okay, so basically they are in a way trustees of that money. Now, if you say, okay, my wife is the nominee of my FD, and you've given that FD, in your will to, say, for example, your daughter or your brother. So then your brother is the beneficiary of that, and your wife is just a trustee. Basically, this way, the financial institution or a bank here, in this case, would be discharged of their own liability. So, the bank doesn't have to wait endlessly to ensure that whose money it is and all of that. So, and of course, practically speaking, it is a very, very important and a very useful way. Many a times if there is a nominee and if the person is not well or something like that, the money can be utilized for the treatment or any other expenses that may be incurred. So of course, nominee is way to go. Everywhere you should have a nominee, and of course there is a right. If you don't want any nominee, or I've come across a lot of people who said, no, I don't want to give it to anybody, I want to give it to the government. Say, so so they choose to not to have a nominee. In fact, there are a lot of people, for various reasons, they don't want their family to come to know about their investments for whatever reasons. So so those are the ways. Those are the occasions where somebody may not want to have a nominee, but normally having a nominee is very, very useful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rahul. And thank you so much, Aditi's dad. I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. Thank you so much for asking those wonderful questions.
Yeah, no, thanks. My name is Soumya Narayan. So that is
Soumya Narayan. Okay, wonderful. Thank you for asking those questions. And we'll go on to Sujata ji. I see her hand has been raised for a while. Please, you can unmute yourself. Yes, go ahead. आप फिर से म्यूट पे आ गई हैं. Can you unmute yourself, please? Yes.
Now it's okay?
Yes, yes. Please tell us.
Good evening to all.
Yes.
See, actually, my problem is very, very special because I am the grandmother of my daughter's child. My daughter is my only child. So to say, she has abandoned the child, so to say. She's 17-year multiple disabled child. She is 17-year-old. She stays with me and my husband. My husband is retired 8 years back. She is in Florida for the last 7 years. And I am in Chennai. So I was thinking in the line of forming a trust for her. As grandparents, can we... and she is also not interested in the trust. She says, I will not be there in the trust. As grandparents, can we go ahead with this trust? And who will be the beneficiaries like that? But see, we are not a natural guardian. So will it be possible as...
I got your question. So Sujata ji, yes, definitely you can make a trust for your granddaughter. Of course you can. Yes. You can make a trust for her, and you can ensure that her needs are taken care of. So you said, who's not interested to be the part of the trust? Your daughter is not interested.
Yes, her mother.
Her mother. Okay. So your daughter is not interested.
Yes,
right?
my daughter, her mother.
Yeah, and your daughter is staying in Florida, you said.
Yes. Actually she works in Chennai, but she's gone for 7 years. I don't think she's going to come back. She doesn't keep any contact with the child. So we are very, very worried. I am 68-year-old already.
Yes.
My husband is 70-year-old. So.
Yes. So Sujata ji, I completely get your point, and I see, and I really thank you for really taking care of this child, because it is easy to say, okay, what can I do, and just kind of abandon or do whatever. But to really take
She is for the last 17 years with me only.
Yes.
I stay alone here and there, my suits, and my husband was in Orissa. So
Yes.
we are now, so to say, managing with his pension. Of course, he's getting a good pension. He was a UGC professor. Still,
Yes.
you know how much money a special child needs.
Yes, I understand, and there is additional money required for this.
Yes.
Now, in your case, of course, you can make a trust, and you can actually ensure that the money is utilized for this grandchild of yours, and it will be useful for her. And since you said that she has a multiple disabilities,
multiple disabilities.
Yes, so
hearing impaired also,
yes.
non-verbal and intellectually challenged, everything.
Yes, I know, and so she has environmental deafness or a full deafness. What is it?
Profound. Full deafness.
Okay, yes. I got it. So in that case, I think therefore it will be very, very important to take care of her, and I it's good that you've taken it on and you wanting to do that. Definitely you should do it. The other point that I also want to bring to your notice is, of course, I understand your daughter, her mother, is not really interested in the child, but you know what I'm saying, at least then ensure. See, I know that there is that additional expenses are required to take care of a disabled child. And I think, therefore, what you could also probably do is to ensure that some financial support or something, although you're not making her a trustee or whatever, she's not interested, that's all fine. But you could probably...
May I interrupt you? She is legally liable to take care of the child, no?
That's exactly what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
So she is liable. I mean, I understand you can't force somebody to take care of her, but at least financially she will need to take care, and especially if she's earning and doing good in life, I think she should contribute a little bit.
Thank you, Sujata, so much for the question, and I hope you are able to get some answers. Thank you, Rahul, for the response as well.
Thank you, Rahul.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I know Sujata ji, his number I had shared. I'll ask Rucha to put it in the chat box again. If you would like to talk to Rahul ji specifically for more guidance, I'm sure Rahul ji will be very happy to provide that for you.
Definitely.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question.
Please put the number again, please.
We will do that. And we will move on next to Raj Srivastav, and then we will go on to Madhu Nahata. Yes, please. Go ahead, Raj. And
I have a daughter who's she's an adult with autism, and we are close to our retirement. We have made provisions for her, and we are doing all sorts of financial planning also. We had engaged in a financial planner, and in his able guidance, we were able to do a lot of sorting out. But I'm also a government employee. So technically, my family pension would go to her after me and my husband are no more. So I just wanted to clarify that, if we are giving her some inheritance, so will that come in the way of her getting the benefit of this family pension?
Yeah, I think normally it shouldn't. But if there is any specific circumstance of, especially the terms of your family pension scheme, if those are, so those need to be seen carefully. What do they say? If it is coming in the way of, her getting the pension, probably making a trust and making her beneficiary through the trust would be a good idea, I think. So instead of directly giving her the inheritance, I think it will be a good idea to. And anyway, see, somebody would be required to ensure the execution of the money. Like if the inheritance is fetching you some income later also, that income will have to be spent on this child and will have to be managed and all of that. So I think
of course,
yes.
we want we are on the verge of starting with her a trust also.
Yes.
But I just wanted, I had this notion that if the amount left in the trust is beyond a certain limit, then the child may not get the family pension.
No, it's not like, see, the important point here is that, a trust is completely different. Now, if you give some inheritance to her name, then it is her money, her income, her assets. Here, it's asset of the trust.
Yes, trust,
right? So she technically doesn't own anything.
Okay.
Right. So yes. So I think that's the idea. Why?
Because she is not owning anything, so she will be
she will be
eligible to get the family pension.
Correct. And of course, you'll have to also see what are the any specific terms of your family pension plan. The scheme that you may be getting. But yes,
it's
generally,
the same as central government.
Central government. Okay, I think then it shouldn't be, but I'm not 100% sure. But I think going by way of a trust would be a better way to go.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your question. Yes, thank you, Rahul.
I really thank Samarthya and
thank you so much, ma'am,
for giving us so much of their precious guidance. And
thank you so much, ma'am. I'm so happy to hear that it's helpful. We will move on to Madhu ji. Before Madhu, I get to you, I just want to quickly say to Sujata ma'am that Jaspreet ma'am has given a good point in the chat box that you will I'm just mentioning this to you, that you will need to apply to become your granddaughter's guardian once she's 18. I think as you're thinking about the trust and all of that, I think that will be the first step that you have to take. I just want to mention that. Thank you, Jaspreet ji. We will move on to Madhu ji. Please go ahead. Yes.
Hello, Rahul ji. I have basically 2 questions regarding the trust for you. The first is how do you select trustees? Like, of course, I have a 10.5-year-old daughter, and she has a ultra rare genetic disorder which causes epilepsy, which causes IQ disability, and which causes physical disability. Okay. And she's an American citizen, but we live in India right now. Okay. So, who are the best prospects to be trustees?
Okay. Good question. See, there is no really bar on who can be the trustee. Okay, anybody can be the trustee. So anybody can be the trustee. But in these kind of situations, I think for now, probably one of the parents or even both the parents could be the trustee of the trust, because right now when the child is with parents, and especially when you said that she's just 10.5, so I think so the parents would know the best about what are what are the things that need to be taken care of the child. So I think it will be a good idea to have the parents as trustee, or even the grandparents, because there the connection is close. So I think it is important to have somebody who would be sensitive to the needs and requirement of this disabled child. I think that really has to be kept in mind, and it's not really necessary. You could have a friend, or even anybody for that matter can be a trustee. Only thing that we'll have to say is that this person is sensitive.
Okay, so continuing with this, you said that people who would be sensitive to my child's needs, etc., could be the best prospects. So, for example, as a mother, I would always be scared of people not being able to do things for her when I'm not around, whom I have appointed as trustee. Maybe tomorrow I and my husband are not here, and then and grandparents are not there. So is it advisable to have people like her neurologist or our lawyer, such people also to be on the trust?
I think not, you may not have them as a trustee, but you can actually keep them as the, part of the maybe kind of a governing council or something like that. You can actually, instead of making them the trustee, you could have them part of it. And I'm not sure whether a lot of neurologists, a lot of lawyers would want to become the trustee of this kind of a family trust. I'm not sure about that. And of course, even if you want to do that, you can do that, but that's because, see, they may have number of other clients or number of other patients to take care of. So I don't know whether that would really serve. But of course, if the neurologist or if the lawyer is really close to your family, and if you really think that they would be willing and would be able to take care of it, of the child, then of course, why not? You can take them as well. But my point is, have the control with you.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So that's the point.
Okay. So, and the next question is that what is the future of a trust? Like, in case if I move back to US, or what happens to the trust then? I mean, of course, it would not be dissolved on its own, right?
Yes,
but
it will not be dissolved.
yeah, but can I dissolve it in case if I want? And
yes.
What is the procedure like?
You can dissolve it at any time. In fact, while you are making the trust in the trust deed, you can make the provision in such a way that the terms of the trust deed would say that this can be dissolved at will at any time by the trustees themselves whenever they feel like. So if you have made that provision, you can definitely dissolve it at any time. Of course, there's a procedure for that. How the assets of the trust would be dissolved and all of that. So that is a procedure that we'll have to do, but definitely it can be dissolved at any time.
Okay. And for example, I have one property or 10 properties or one FD or 10 FDs. I put all that in my trust. Okay. Yes. And so what if tomorrow a situation arises that I need to sell one of it?
Yeah. So see, as I said, now when you actually see the whole idea is that, this is being done for the benefit of the child here.
Yeah.
Right. So now if you want to sell any, say, for example, if you want to break your FD, sell it. Definitely you can do that as a trustee because the whole control is in your hand. However, you cannot take that in your own account. This then would come to the trust's account, and the trust, and the money can be spent as per the terms of the trust.
Okay. Okay.
Right. So that way it will be.
All right.
Or it will have to be sold to you by the trust, technically.
Okay. Okay. All right. Sold to me by the trust.
Trust, yes.
Okay. And sir, one more thing. What about life insurance policies? Does it have a place in the trust? I mean, somehow.
See, life insurance is a personal contract.
Yeah.
Right. So trust, you cannot have a life insurance beneficiary as a trust. Sorry, you can have them as a beneficiary, but you cannot take insurance on the name of the trust.
No, I meant, for example, tomorrow, whatever claim is given to my family after my death, for example. So is there a provision that amount could be the part of the trust? That's my question. Like, I mean, so that it goes to my child. I want to ensure that.
So what you can then do, so what you can then do is you can actually write in your will okay, that whatever is the life insurance amount would come after my death should go, whether the entire amount or whatever percent that you would say, would go to this trust. So you can actually make a provision in your will to that effect.
Okay. Okay.
And then it will go to the trust.
Acha. Okay.
Wonderful.
Fine, sir.
Great
Yes.
question, Madhuji. Thank you so much.
Thank you. As a mother, I'm always thinking.
You're thinking way far ahead and very good questions.
I really appreciate all
Yeah.
of you people when you are asking these questions, and I really get the kind of worries that you have, the kind of questions, and I'm always happy to answer them.
Yes.
As much as I can.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rahul sir, and thank you, Shivani, for conducting this. It's very helpful for parents like us.
Our pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for being here. We will move on to Sushil Ji's. I think it'll be our last question. Sushil Ji, please, you can turn on your video and you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hello, I am Dhruv's father.
Okay, hello, sir. How are you?
My question is about what is the role of the executor of the trust and guardianship if given to somebody? What is the roles of these two designations?
Okay, so now I got that, Sushilji. So see, to answer your first question, what is the role of the executor? See, the executor is not, executor is for your estate planning. Okay. Now, if you say that you have said that, my estate should go, FD should go to this, my home should go to the other one, and all of that. So to ensure whether it is going to the proper person or not, that is the role of the executor who executes the wishes, your wishes after you. So that's the role that the executor plays. Okay. The other question that you asked was
guardianship.
Guardian. Okay, now the guardian is entirely different. Here, guardian is a person who has been designated as a guardian by the government or
court.
Right. So by the court, right? So here, the guardian is able to take decisions on behalf of the disabled person, right? So here, the guardian may or may not be the executor of the will. He can be an entirely different person, the executor. But guardian, especially only the guardianship is only applicable here in this context, is applicable only for the for taking the decision on behalf of the disabled person.
That means he cannot make any profit or anything of the whatever the property or trust is there. Guardianship.
No,
if it is a given guardianship is given to a person, he cannot make a profit out of the property or whatever the execution is doing. He has to only give the instruction for executing this thing. Is it a similar roles?
So for executor, definitely he can make a profit if you say so in your will. He can make if you say that XYZ is my executor of my will, and he will get, for ensuring that the execution services, he would get whatever is the remuneration. If you say so, he will get that.
And but the same is not true for the guardianship.
Now, guardianship is, as I said, it's actually entirely for the person with disability, his benefit, in the sense that so that his interests are secured, right? Okay. So therefore, these roles are, although they may sound similar, but they are different roles, absolutely.
But even the blood relation has to be appointed as the guardianship. We have to go to the court and get it done.
Yes. So there is I think in our last session, we have talked in detail about the guardianship issue. And there we've talked about what is the procedure, what are the issues that we face. So I think I'll request Shivani ji, if it's, unless it's uploaded already. So they may upload it soon probably. And
yes, I think it is uploaded already on the YouTube channel. Okay. I will put it up on the
actually
chat
go through,
box.
and if you have then any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Of course, my pleasure. It's thank you so much for asking the question. Rucha, if you don't mind, please can you put the link of our YouTube channel in the chat box as well? So before we end the show, they can at least click on it and they don't lose the link. And before we wrap up, Rahul, there is one just quick question from Sujata ji. She's put in the chat box, if after we are not there, will the trustees still operate? And can my daughter claim beneficiaries? That is the question.
Your daughter is not a beneficiary here. You can make her the trustee of the trust, of course, or somebody else also. You can appoint somebody as a trustee after you, but she cannot claim the benefits of the trust unless you have said so.
Okay. All right. I hope that answered your question, ma'am. And if there are no more questions, I think we can end the session here. I'm just going to take 1 minute. Yes. So Rucha has posted the link for the YouTube channel. For anybody who's missed our previous sessions, Rahulji has been, so Snik and Samarthya have been working together to do these series once a month. We meet last Sunday of every month from 5:30 to 7 p.m. And every month Rahulji picks up a different topic. So we have covered many topics since January, as you can imagine. And we are almost coming to our end now of the year, in our series. So any videos that you may have missed, you can easily go on the YouTube channel that has been posted. Please click on it now, because once we end the session, you will lose the link. We will also post the link in our groups, or you can email us, most importantly. Rucha, please do put my email in the chat box as well, or Harshali's email. You can contact any one of us for videos or any questions you have. We have put in Rahul ji's number and email as well in the chat box. Please dekh lijiye usko. Just scroll through it. I think thoda sa upar hai unka number. Definitely write down his number, message him, because he's really amazing. And Rahul, thank you so much once again, yet again, for such an amazing session. As always, I think you provide such great amount of information to our families, and all the questions that they ask and all the answers that you're able to provide. So like I said, सबके contact numbers आप ले लीजिए, please chat box में से email ले लीजिए, and please feel free to message any one of us, either Harshali or me or Rahul, and हम में से कोई ना कोई definitely आपके questions answer कर पाएंगे. And for any of the previous sessions that you have missed, please go on the Samarthya YouTube channel, click on the link, and then again come back to us with any questions. Yes, any other thoughts? Harshali, would you have any thoughts to share before we wrap up?
No, I think we are done. I mean, all questions are beautifully answered by Rahul sir. I mean, indeed.
Yes.
Yeah. So
okay.
Today's.
All right.
Yeah.
With that, thank you. With that, we wrap up our session today. Thank you to all the parents for being here. Really, really appreciate you taking the time on a Sunday evening and sitting with us and talking about this very, very important topic. As always, many, many thanks to you, Rahul, for being here. We'll see you all next month again. And thanks to my partners, Harshali and Rucha, for being here. I saw Vyoma also was there some time ago. There she is. Vyoma is also here from Samarthya. So from us as a team, we thank you, and we will look forward to welcoming you again for another session next month. It will be the last Sunday. I think it's the 30th of November. Same time, we will send the flyer with the topic, and we'll send the link, the Zoom link, and please come back again with your questions and with your comments, and have a great rest of the evening. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Samarthya and parents, all of you, and especially Rahul sir. Thank you so much.
Yes. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.